Okay, so I've had a subscriber here for a while. I think she's a subscriber. I know she watches my book videos. Anyway, she actually started a channel. I'm going to leave her link down below. She is from Canada, y'all, and go watch her videos. They are so much fun. I love her book videos. All that to say, I'm going to leave her link down below, but why I bring her up is she did like these reading vlog check-in videos, and they were really fun to watch. I won't make them. They're just not the thing I can put time into right now. I liked them because I liked her showing a viewpoint as a mom with kids homeschooling how to make reading time in. I really enjoyed that. And yes, like I said, it's not something that I would be able to do. I thought it would be really fun. And so I'm going to kind of spin off of that with this video because I won't have this book to share with you at the end of the month. We're already kind of going through what I assumed was going to be the case in February, just not as much reading time. I'm really getting back into homeschooling, really trying to push that. Home closing, bunch of things going on. And I'm trying to crochet a throw blanket for my sister as a wedding gift. So like any moment I have, I'm putting into that and listening to an audiobook, but I need it quiet. That's not working out. Anyway, all that to say, this is day 3 and this is how far I am on that. I'm really enjoying this. And so this is where I'll put this little fun clip and hopefully keep the video much shorter than I think it'll be. Anyway, so day 3, here we are. I finished it. And I'm pretty impressed I finished this nonfiction work within a week. I think that was actually really good. Nonfiction, I tend to take more time to kind of ponder, assess, because it's being presented as fact. And so a lot of times with that, I like to just make sure I know what people are talking about, for lack of a better word. I just take nonfiction much more slowly than I take anything else. And wow, this book. Okay, let's talk about a couple things. One, I really liked David Grann. I really liked the way he wrote, because this is kind of divided into 3 sections. First, you have the setting of all these Osage murders that people are trying to figure out who did it, and you're kind of going along with them and trying to figure out who did it. There's a lot of speculation. There is a lot of falsified information, falsified witnesses. Yeah, not so many good ones. But you also get how these Indians were treated. I mean, there was lividness at the fact that these Indians had this money and nobody could really touch it. So you have that prejudice kind of going throughout there. So with that, you're trying to figure out, or you're trying to figure out who it did. I didn't really think it was that much of a mystery. I kind of had my suspicions, but it isn't a walkout. You're watching the killer do all this. You're still trying to figure out based on what these local authorities have, what these Indians have, and then when this FBI agent White comes into the picture, what he has and how he figures things out. So the first half is just kind of setting the scene. The second half is how White, this FBI agent who is kind of under Hoover's thumb, for lack of a better word. It wasn't that he was under the thumb, it was kind of like how he was a pawn for Hoover's schemes to kind of put FBI in everybody's radar. I don't know too much about J. Edgar Hoover, to be honest, and I don't think I really want to. Anyway, so you kind of just see White then go, again, the first part we're trying to figure this out. The second part, we're following White as he's trying to figure out how to nail the people that are behind doing this, because they are very influential. They have their hands in everybody's pockets. And yeah, and then you have a third part, which is a deeper conspiracy than anybody, um, that nobody pursued. Wow. So a lot of this, I kept talking to my husband. I was like, it's interesting to me because reading this, I can see the outrage that many people have for justice and can understand why they cry socialism, down with the rich, take them out of power. But the funny thing is that by doing that, you're actually putting somebody else in power that has more money than you're really. Socialism and communism it's just moving power, and moving, and evil always trumps in this world, and we don't like to think that. It's hard to tell how many stars I want to give, because my first inclination is 4.5. If it goes to 4.5, I do the whole estimating rounding thing that we learned in school, and it goes to the next number. So once you hit that 0.5, you round to the next number. And I don't know if I would give this a 5 stars. I think I would round it down, but then I have to question, well, why wouldn't you give it 5 stars? The writing was really well. I was wanting more. I think the reason it's not going to get a 5 stars is simply because I had to get to points where I had to put it down. Like, I was starting to glaze over things, and I don't know if that's necessarily like the writing because of it, or just it's nonfiction, and nonfiction can get pretty heavy. And it's going to take a really good nonfiction book to get 5 stars. So I think that's where I'm going to go with that insofar as rating. Can I recommend this book? Again, especially with nonfiction, you just have to have the right person. I really liked seeing kind of the birth of FBI happen. I really liked kind of understanding more of these Indians. There's such a pendulum swing for, and I really can't say Indians. I'm so used to saying Indians. Even I think here they say the Osage Indians, but it's actually the Osage Native Americans. No, it is Native Americans. They do say it. I'm just so used to saying Indians. Native Americans, the Osage Native Americans. There's just so much to consider, and I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could recommend this because I know there's going to be several people that just really don't care, and giving it to them is not going to change opinions or anything. So, can I recommend this book as across the board? No, because I don't tend to do that. Books tend to be personalized, and I don't think this would be across the board recommendation like some of the other ones that I have. I will say, if you do enjoy like conspiracy, definitely, okay, this is kind of funny. Here's a funny story. Reading this at night, one night I read this just before I went to bed, which I knew better, and it's talking about how these Indians are being picked off one by one. The first half of the story is you're getting the details. The second and third, not so much, because it's more about the trials and nabbing the killer and whatever. But the first half, you do get the gruesome details. And I knew better not to read this just before I went to bed. And yep, one night, the night I did, I woke up just in a sweat, just had a nightmare, and I was livid that my husband would not get up and check and make sure that the doors were locked. So I had to like really talk myself into getting up, dashing through the house, making sure the doors were locked, dashing to bed, and then I was freaking out that I locked a killer in my house. When you wake up, you're like, oh my god, that is ridiculous. But when you first wake up, especially after a nightmare, like everything is real. And I was so angry with my husband. This guy has no idea. Like he's exhausted, and here I am upset that he won't, get a shotgun and walk through the house. Based on the fact that I just read this just before bed. Anyway, things like that make me funny. So anyway, so that's going to be the review for this book. And I don't know how many books I'm going to get done this month, so it's probably good. This looks like I've read it so many times. I hate poor quality printed books because you read it once, and it's not like I threw this across the room or anything. But it looks like it's a well-read book. I know some people like that. It bothers me. Anyway, I just don't know how many books I'm going to actually get read this month because I spent a lot of time trying to get a quilt or a blanket crocheted as a wedding gift, and then next week we're supposed to start moving, and by the time you see this, my sister will have been here for 2 weeks if everything goes well, and I can fly back to California for that wedding. I'm gonna fly back here with my baby sister, who I kind of always said is like a older daughter for me, my oldest daughter. Anyway, so I'm not sure how many books I'm gonna get read, so this might kind of help balance out a book review month. So anyway, that's my thought for that book. Okay, so let's talk about The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam and Jenoff. And I think I talked about this in my haul because this is one of the ones that I picked up for my Blow Money. This thing is like 360 some odd pages, and I read it on a 4-hour flight, and I didn't want to put it down. So that tells you how good it was. I'm kind of comparing it to the Alice Network because it has like that girl spy espionage thing that was very undercover, very hidden. But I liked this one so much better than the Alice Network. So these girls have code names, and the premise of the story is you're following 3 girls. You're following one in 1946 who basically, she's lost her husband in a car accident. She witnesses a gruesome car accident and then ends up finding these pictures of these girls. And then she's trying to figure out what the connection to the girls are, what the car accident to these pictures are that she found. Then you flip back to a woman named Eleanor, who is actually the gal that was killed in the car accident, and her leadership role in putting this group of girls together as undercover espionage spy group ring. So she's kind of the head honcho of all of that. Then you have one of the girls and her story as a spy espionage type of thing, and it's all within the course of I think like 4 years. It was really well done. There is some language in here, but unlike the Alice Network, even some of the like romance is not too detailed, and even some of the stuff that went on with Hitler and all of that, while it was true, it was again not too detailed, which I appreciate that. So this one I think I ended up giving 4 stars. I would even say 4.5. I don't think it was quite up to a 5-star where I must read this again, which is kind of how I put those star ratings. But again, it was really well done. I liked it better than the Alice Network, and I would recommend this. So I can't really, the problem is that there's so many twists and turns and connecting dots, so it's really hard to talk about this book without giving something away. And there's just a lot of politics behind this. Pam Jenoff definitely goes into using fiction liberties with this book. And so she definitely addresses all of that at the end of this, so you can kind of get an idea of what is real and what was fictionalized. So I wish I could write more and say more. I just don't know how to do it adequately without giving something away, because there is so many small moving parts that work together. There is so you have Marie and Eleanor who's working undercover, and then you have, I can't remember her name, Grace. Then you have Grace, who's working for an elderly guy who's basically kind of trying to help all these immigrants and people find homes. So his job is to help immigrants and people that have lost loved ones in the war kind of get compensation to help them begin a new life, kind of thing. He is so sweet. He is that guy that you just love. Anyway, so yeah, that's the review I can give to you for this book, and I really enjoyed it. World War II, it's getting up there and you read a lot, but this is definitely a nice little twist on it. So that's my review for this book. We are about a week away from closing out the month, but I have two books I want to share now, while especially one is fresh on my mind. I read this one. It's T. Davis Bunn's The Quilt, and I read it in 2 days. Actually, I read it in a day. Yes, that's your horse trailer. And I have read this book so many times. I don't even know how many times I've read it. It was actually, and Thomas? Okay. Mommy's turn. Mommy's turn. This is actually one that I read quite often in my teen years. The whole plot behind this book is that you have Mary, who is a grandmother at this point. She's got horrible arthritis. Her hands are disfigured, and she's pretty much on her deathbed. And she's told by God to make this quilt, which, okay, Johnny, go play. Go play. Which at this, you know, that's typically not my kind of thing. I think that God's word is the complete and final word of God, that he doesn't speak to us. So right off the bat, like, it doesn't sound like the kind of book I would really enjoy. But there's going to be a lot of noise, y'all. It's the Mondayest Monday ever. Anyway, so with this book, she's told by God to make this quilt. And everybody thinks she's crazy. Like, she's not the kind of person to do that. She's deformed, you know, her hands are all gnarled and things. So she's like, God told me to make this quilt, and each stitch is with a prayer of thanksgiving. Like, you don't make a stitch without a prayer of thanksgiving. Well, then her son's wives come in, and they're like, we're going to help you because this needs to get done. This is very important to you. This is how we're going to help. So they start doing it, and she's just adamant, you are not to make a stitch without a prayer of thanksgiving to the Lord. And I mean, it's a short, I think they called them little gift books. I remember another one that I really loved, which was by Jeanette Oak, called Nana's Gift. And I just read them so much that I loved them. Mommy, and so they're God's talking again. Yeah. Oh, that's kind of a funny story. So anytime we see the sun shine through the clouds and it kind of makes those sunbeam rays, we call it God's talking. And my kids love looking for that. Back to the book. This is pure fluff. Like, there's nothing here that is spiritually enriching. Okay, honey, there's nothing in here that you're just going to, I don't even know what, but I love it. And I remember, ever since I was a teen, having really bad times a month. My brother calls him Tom. Tom is visiting time of month. And one time, I literally locked myself in my room, and I cross-stitched a pillow that had this pansy on it. Pansies are my favorite flower. And I was trying to do this concept. And as a teen, and I know it's even now, it is so hard to concentrate on being prayerful. And I didn't even focus on Thanksgiving. I was just trying to practice being prayerful and mindful and talking to God as I was stitching this. And that, I think, because I had done that, makes me more connected with this book. There's a scene in here where she's got all these Bibles like tied up. They're falling apart. She's read them so much. And I always wanted that. I always wanted that deep faith with the old Bibles falling apart. Not because I just left it on a nightstand and it fell down and constantly that happening. Which it has. But the constant use of the old Bible. And this time around reading it as an adult, because I saw this in a thrift store for like 25-50 cents and I picked it up. And I read it again and I was just struck by this one scene of her son and her. And she asked him to read Romans, I think it was 1. And, you know, I read that through the eyes of unbelievers, evilness in the world. But this time I read it through an eye of a believer, because she points out, she's like, you know, that's kind of the problem with all of us. We don't give thanks to God, and we don't acknowledge him as our creator and give thanks to him. And she was using that one verse in Romans. I'll put it here because I'm not going to get up from my chair. If I do, something's going to call me away from this. But she used that line, and she's like, that's a sin. Not giving thanks to God, it's a sin, and it's demoralizing to who God the creator is. And I read that and I just sat the book down and just had to take that all in, because wow, as an adult you just see that in a completely different light. Anyway, I love anything quilt making. Added to the many things that I was going to do as an adult, but I was going to live in a little yellow house and live in the front half of the house, and then the other side that you could have a door that would go into was going to be my quilt shop. And so I always have like these little ideas behind quilts. When I was going to have a bed and breakfast boarding house type thing, I was going to have all my own home handmade quilts on the bed. So yeah, there's always something about that, but really enjoyed that one. Love and War by Melissa De La Cruz. She did the the Descendants novels, which I think she's more known for that. Wow. Okay, so this is a YA trilogy on Eliza Schuyler and Alexander Hamilton. I did a review of the first book last month, and it's taken me a month and a few days to get through the second book. I got through the first book in like a couple of days. So many thoughts about this book. I don't know if I'm going to be able to summarize all of them. Just so many thoughts. First of all, it took me like half of the book to even get into the story. The first half, Alexander is off to war. Eliza is at her parents' house, and all of that back and forth between like her family's kind of, they're breaking up, and they're going to establish their own household and name and all of that. She's still from like the top family of the day, and Alexander is still kind of making his name. To be honest, I don't remember enough of the first half of the story to even adequately review it. Like, that's how little of this I remember. I know that a lot of it, Alexander is like going for fame. He just wants to be in the field, kind of making a name for himself, not just as Washington's aide-de-camp. And you get a little bit of like his drive in there. Okay, then part 2 happens, and I think it just kind of picked up a little bit more. Alexander Hamilton and Eliza Hamilton now, she's married, moved to New York. He is now trying to establish himself as a lawyer, and she is trying to basically build up the Hamilton name. And they're renting this house, and the author, De La Cruz, does a lot with, this is kind of thing where I think she Okay, so, okay, yes. The second half, it didn't read almost like a YA, and this is the reason. They talk a lot about Elizabeth and like her establishing a household. And so at one scene, she's trying to debate how to display the china and the silver. And there's kind of this, you know, debate within herself. Should she put the china with the silver? And she kind of talks about the different pieces. They were kind of fascinating to me. The problem is I didn't really see kids really enjoying it. It would be like saying, this is an Ethan Allen versus, I don't even know what's out there, y'all. Smith Brothers type of thing. I don't really see that being something that interests the youth if this is a 12 to 18 type of read, which is what YA is typically labeled as. The other thing is you kind of get details in it that, again, I really did enjoy as an adult. I didn't really see the younger generation kind of enjoying that. Details such as like who's who in the money world, for lack of a better word, connections, things like that. This isn't so much Alex and Eliza's love story. I think in this book you kind of start to see the setup for Hamilton's affair later. And it's kind of like those, Johnny, leave yourself alone. It's kind of like this gradual chain of events that begins. It starts off with Alexander just being really late at the office, trying his case, building up his name, working this one particular case that was actually fictionalized for Mrs. Childress, I think her name is. I think it was Mrs. Childress. I honestly don't remember. Anyway, it was a widow woman that basically, since she was kind of a loyalist, the Patriots ended up taking her home away, or her establishments, and it's a case that Alexander fought for her. Now, he did fight for situations such as this, but this particular case, there is no documented historical thing for it. That is one thing I really liked that Melissa De La Cruz did, is that in the back, she kind of acknowledges the things, or like, dear reader, I've acknowledged that they had a child right off, and I didn't want that in the story right offhand. I kind of wanted to wait and kind of set the scene, for lack of a better word. And I appreciate when someone like me coming into the picture, not really knowing too much about the Alexander Hamilton story, kind of, again, that acknowledgement of where I took these liberties and things like that. Couple other things about this, and there's so many thoughts about this, and I know I'm gonna miss some things that I would have liked to have touched on, but one of the things that I noticed is kind of the setup for the women's, I can't even say it, the women's suffragette, see, I can't even say it, oh my gosh. There are some days when I can't say it, but basically the women's rights movement. There's kind of the setup for it. And that's kind of a debatable timeline thing. But at the same time, like, I keep thinking of people like Abigail Adams that was kind of a pioneer behind that. Which is interesting because I feel like a lot of times people take the women's rights movement as almost a liberal feminism movement, and there was some of that, but it wasn't all that. And I thought this book kind of showed a side to that that I appreciated. So I thought that was interesting because you see Eliza, her love for Alexander in here, like some of the frustrations she dealt with, but as a whole, building his reputation up. And then I found a Smithsonian article online more about Elizabeth Schuyler Hamilton and just what she did behind the scenes for her husband. And it made me think of people like Queen Victoria. I love Victoria and Albert's story. BBC did a TV series many moons ago. Like, again, another one I really loved as a high schooler. And they did one with Jonathan Firth, and I thought, and it's the one actress, she plays in Pride and Prejudice, but she's not, anyway, she plays in Pride and Prejudice. She's one of the officers' wives, and she plays in a lot of period pieces, but anyway, she played Victoria in that, and their love story I love. Anyway, Queen Victoria kind of has that strong woman mentality, but still very respectful to her husband. Definitely a helpmeet. And I think you get that with Elizabeth and Hamilton's love story. So, finally, I did only give it 3 stars. Like I said, there was just a lot of, it was good. I enjoyed it. I think the first one was better. This one was fine. It just, I think, kind of got lost in setting up their family life, like what they're starting from. They're starting from the beginning. They're starting from scratch. And I think the author just put too much information in that you kind of started losing their story. I see what she was trying to do, but for a YA book, she kind of overkilled it. So anyway, that's going to be the wrap up for this review, and I'll let you know what I think of the 3rd book. So as a whole, the trilogy I think is interesting, especially for those that love the Hamilton musical, because that's kind of why she started writing this, especially since she's kind of a fantasy type of writer. Johnny, not right now. So, you know, doing historical fiction after writing fantasy, that's kind of like a big leap. So, anyway, I'll let you know what I think of the trilogy as a whole. It'll probably be the wrap-up for that next month. I don't think I'm going to be able to finish that book in a week. And that's going to be my wrap-up for the month. I've got a lot of books right now reading. On Goodreads, I've been starting to put down, like, when I start a book, and keeping, like, a realistic track of how long it takes me to read a book, I think is very eye-opening for a lot of people, especially the books that I read with my children. Like, right now, you are propped up on a basket full of books that I'm reading out loud, and we read maybe a chapter a week. So anyway, that's going to be the wrap-up for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have another cup of coffee and read another chapter.